Since Season 6 of My Hero Academia is starting here soon in October, I did a rewatch of the entire 5th season. Here are my thoughts from episode 1 to 5. These are all clips from my TikTok, so that's why these are all going to have different shirts and kind of slightly different editing, just because they're each individual videos. If you do want to just watch each individual episode, full breakdown, make sure to check out the link in my bio to see my TikTok to see them individually. So here are my thoughts of Season 5, Episode 1. I really like how they did a recap of like previously on type thing, but as like a conversation between the students. It's like how it would actually kind of be in real life instead of just showing last time on, like in Dragon Ball Z. So you actually know what's actually kind of going on with the villains and with Endeavor and Shoto and everyone, and kind of showing like what is happening. And then after that's done kind of happening, it jumps right into the show and then right into the new intro, which I really like. This is actually one of my favorite intro songs. I really like the part in the opening with Miss Midnight and how she's just super joyful. It's just so cute and funny. I just like it. By going into the actual episode, a cool situation and how they show how the stakes are getting higher, getting more difficult by going into an actual emergency situation. And I like how they actually broke the class down as if they kind of pretty much did it themselves, into like reconnaissance and rescue and searching and everything like that. Each people using their quirks in different teams to actually help, and in the way that they actually should be, which is actually pretty cool. Because this is a first episode of a season, they did the kind of quirk explanation clips again. In this one, I kind of like how they do it as the actual characters are doing what they need to do. They kind of break it down as a bit of a refresher, a bit of a reminder of who each character is and what each character does. And then when they get to Bakugo, just Bakugo quirk explosion, hero name, undecided, because this is true. He just hasn't decided a name yet, and I wonder what he'll eventually come up with when the show is done. Maybe something finally comes up. Good way of showing the kind of like funniness of what students and kids that age actually are. Like when Mirio falls into the river and Mineta just goes, "Wow, he's doing this on purpose!" Like, because he's it shows the actual teenageness of it, which is actually kind of funny. Or how Tomoki is still like as the villain character for this fight, but he's so in character, it's just like not wanting to be there, just wanting to go home. It's just who he is. He doesn't even care that he's portraying this villain. But yeah, overall, I really think Season 5, Episode 1 is a really good kind of recap of the previous season to get a good reminder of what kind of happened, what the stakes are, what's going on, and a good continuation into what the story is and what it's going to be for this season. Here's my thoughts on Episode 2. I found it actually quite intense on how it opened up with how injured and damaged Endeavor actually is after his fight with Nomu, and almost getting into a fight again right away with Dabi was actually pretty intense right off the bat. And then kind of after that settles down a little bit, getting into seeing Dabi talking with Hawks as part of the League of Villains, throws you off quite a bit when you first see it, until I guess a few minutes later that it's okay, calms down a little bit and finds out that he's meant to be there. One of my favorite parts of this episode was definitely when Endeavor is actually back home with his family and his daughter is trying to get everyone back together, trying to get the family kind of back together. But you have this quick little line from Shoto, just, "Nice scar, I bet it hurt," just sarcastic, right on as he has his same exact one. It just blank stare, that's just a big, "Oh, fuck you" type of zing. I like how this episode gets into a little bit more in depth of who Endeavor actually kind of is as a person almost, and how he's trying to learn and grow from his past, trying to grow as an individual, and trying to get back with his family to right his wrongdoings. And this is really well demonstrated with the line, again, that Shoto even says. He says, "Endeavor was a really good hero in that moment, but you are still being a terrible father." Then after all this, it even still goes into Deku's kind of story, and goes and explains even more into the history and the story behind All for One, One for All, and how that kind of comes into play, and kind of explains this in-depth analysis of what the actual power actually is and how it kind of started to grow. And being told in this kind of dream-like state is a very visually appealing way of showing up what's kind of going on. The only kind of weird thing I didn't like about this episode was literally just how it ends. It was just kind of just abrupt of after Deku wakes up and then just goes to end credits. So it was kind of weird how Deku didn't like kind of fully react to what was happening in this dream. But overall, I think this episode was a good balance between showing, again, with Endeavor from what happened with him in the previous seasons and what's kind of going on in the world, and with Deku showing what he's trying to still learn and trying to understand with One for All. Here are my thoughts on Season 5, Episode 3. This was definitely the slowest episode I've seen so far, which kind of makes sense. You always have up and down type of episodes, which is perfectly fine. It's kind of neat how it did a bit of a recap of what happened in the previous episode with Deku and the kind of vision that he had, or without showing the entire thing again. But I did kind of like how not even All Might knew exactly what was going on with these visions and everything. I liked how they kind of introduced what the actual opening credit scene actually is, so into what this fight is between Class 1A and Class B, which sometimes when you're watching anime, the opening credits have kind of nothing really to do with the actual show, what the actual episodes are about. Or they'll change, like the opening credits to be quite different to what the actual show is, which they kind of do here a little bit. I kind of find it interesting how the reintroduction to Shinzo that may be causing kind of the visions for Deku, because it was his mind control that caused it in the first place when he fought against Deku in the sports festival. I like that even though it was kind of focusing on this main kind of vision with Deku and kind of what's going on, they're still obviously going into what the main story is, as well as the other classmates and everything going into learning and growing. And I like how it actually introduced kind of the teams and who's going to be fighting, and even though at this point we have almost no idea what the abilities are of Class 1B. Getting introduced to new characters is actually going to be pretty good coming up, so getting excited for that. And I like how this episode ended with more of a full frontal attack, like holy shit, this is actually happening, and introducing Shinzo's new tech all in the same kind of moment. This was definitely the biggest big moment ending of the season so far. Overall, a good kind of continuation into the main story and introduction to new characters, so I'm quite excited to see where this Class 1A versus 1B kind of matchup was going to continue going. These are my kind of thoughts, reactions for episode 4. Oh, this is definitely the most exciting episode we've had so far. The first fight between Class 1A and Class 1B continued on in this episode. I really liked the dynamic between the going back and forth, like who is actually going to win this. It was majorly in the favor of Class B, especially at the beginning, showing the pure powerhouse of Giant Beast, or whatever the heck his actual name is. He's essentially kind of version of Beast from the X-Men. So this kind of like fight back and forth was actually, holy shit, actually pretty close to not knowing who was actually going to win. Especially since us, as the audience, know the powers and abilities of all of Class 1A, because that's what the show is really about, is about them. So we don't even know what the abilities are of all of the characters from Class 1B. We might have seen some of them a little bit here and there, and there's a couple movies and stuff like that interact with them a little bit. So if you know that, you know a little bit, but you definitely don't know it even close to as much as Class 1A. And that kind of like non-knowledge is kind of explained even throughout in-universe in the show, as well as like when Class 1A with Sue, everyone knows mostly about her abilities, but not even everyone in Class 1A knows about her kind of like mucus ability, essentially. And it kind of even put Deku and Mineta on this that's like good surprise. Like that was a good little kind of trick. So I liked how they kind of made this plan, and how even Denki Kaminari was able to come up with a last minute kind of plan that helped him out quite a bit. I really like how Shinzo, within the start of the fight to like the end, has already learned a little bit, considering at the beginning when they first got attacked, he hesitated a little too much with his cloth, with the binding cloth. But then afterwards, as they continued going, he reacted a lot faster and was able to at least get an attack in, even though because he still doesn't have the agility and stuff that some of the other characters have, he was still able to get an attack in. And then because of the previous fight that they had before, using his voice modulator, they were able to work as a team to kind of like throw everything off. Good kind of mix between the teamwork between everyone and the confusion, which is kind of like a real life situation. You won't know exactly what's happening in a real life kind of battle. You won't know everything. You'll always have surprises, essentially. So it's a good kind of learning opportunity for both Class 1A and B as well. Overall, great episode. Let's continue watching. And wow, this was such a cool, interesting episode. Gotta say that Shirakiro is definitely the coolest quirk from Class 1B that I've seen so far. Like being able to kind of hide in the shadows and transport and go wherever any type of shadow will be is actually really pretty cool actually. It would actually be quite difficult for someone like Shikamaru from Naruto to be able to fight against, which is actually kind of funny, but that's beside the point. But because Tokiyome and Hawks are up there with my favorite characters of the show in general, this was a cool kind of interesting episode kind of going into their story and how they kind of went into everything, since we didn't see any of that throughout the other hero internships that the other classmates kind of went. So this kind of new surprise move that Tokiyome has was pretty cool, and it shows how he actually is controlling and learning his power and his abilities. So especially since when I first started watching, I did find it weird that a man that has a bird head doesn't have the ability to fly. So I like how they kind of found a way to make it kind of work for him and make him even more powerful. Especially since even though considering the top three of the main characters of the class are Deku, Bakugo, and Shoto, I kind of think to put more of the emphasis on Tokiyome and how he is strong and powerful and probably one of the most powerful characters of the school, like of the first years. And that's the thing I like about this episode, because it actually gives Tokiyome more credit that he actually should have as a kind of more main character. I think he's definitely up there with Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto as the strongest ability characters in their class. So yeah, this episode was really good because I liked the kind of backstory and history and story with Tokiyome and kind of Hawks, and interesting kind of dynamic that they have, and a good new introduction to a kind of quite interesting character in Kyoro, with his shadows and everything. So I think it's another really cool character. So far, still really good. So, that was my thoughts on episode 1 through 5. Make sure to continue on to the next one to see my thoughts on episodes 6 through 10. Make sure to follow along. I'm going to continue having my thoughts and reactions to each episode of Season 6 when it comes out. Those episodes, make sure to follow me on TikTok because they're going to be posted on TikTok first. But let me know, what was your favorite part, scene, episode, character moment from these 5 episodes? Make sure to let me know in a comment below. But other than that, see ya!